The senator from South Dakota.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, as we rise today, I want to talk about the economy and the need to create an economic climate that encourages job growth and strengthens the middle class. But before I do that, I do want to acknowledge, as many as my colleagues have, the tragedy that occurred here at the Washington Navy Yard yesterday. We're going to debate a lot of issues. The business of the country goes on, the business of the Senate goes on. But for the families of the victims of that tragedy yesterday, things stand still. And it's important for all of us, I think, to take a moment and to mourn with them the loss that they've experienced, and to extend our thoughts and prayers to their families and to their loved ones. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy. And as we continue the back and forth that we have on the issues of the day here, I hope, Mr. President, that we'll all remember and keep in our thoughts and prayers those families. Mr. President, I do want to speak today to the economy. The President is yet again this week, in fact, he gave a speech yesterday where he was pivoting back to the economy, a topic that millions of unemployed Americans haven't had the luxury of pivoting away from. For most Americans, they are living this economy every single day in their personal lives. And so when the President talks about pivoting back to the economy, this has been a repivot and a repivot many, many times. He talks about something else for a while and then talks about coming back to the economy. Well, for the American people, the economy was, and has been, and will continue to be the issue for them and their families. And so as the President steps up his rhetoric to try and convince a skeptical public that his policies have somehow helped our economy, I think it's important to point out that the President's policies, according to the facts, simply aren't working. The reality is the participation in the labor force continues to decline. The August jobs numbers report a labor participation rate of 63.2%, and that's the lowest participation rate since August of 1978, 35 years ago, when President Carter was president. What this means, Mr. President, is that thousands of Americans hadn't given up looking for work. The unemployment rate would be over 10%. We talk about the reported unemployment rate, which is 7.3, 7.4. It's hovered around that range for a long time. But the real unemployment rate should include those who have quit looking for work. And when you add that number in, the unemployment rate goes up to 10.6%. In August, the number of long-term unemployed, and those are those people who have been jobless for 27 weeks or more, remained roughly at 4.3 million people. Those individuals accounted for 37.9% of the unemployed. So we're not seeing any improvement in the area of people who have been without jobs for a long period of time. Worse yet, 60% of the jobs created this year were part-time jobs. We continue to see, Mr. President, evidence that the President's policies, President Obama's policies, are leading to not the creation of full-time jobs, but the creation of part-time jobs. In other words, Americans are having to work more than one job to make ends meet, and therefore reducing the take-home pay for them and their families. And that's another thing that we have seen. Take-home pay has gone down in this President's time in office. The American people understand that the President's economic policies have fallen short, and that's why, as you look at these various polls, most Americans, a majority of Americans, disapprove of the President's handling of the economy. The reality remains that this administration's policies are hurting jobs in our economy. And Mr. President, the President's signature health care law is probably as much to blame for that as anything else. As I talk to employers in my state of South Dakota and across the country, the recurring theme is that the mandates, the requirements, all the new red tape associated in the higher taxes with the President's health care law is meaning higher taxes and fewer hours for American workers. According to Americans for Tax Reform, there are 20 new or higher taxes in Obamacare that will hit American families and small businesses. As a result of these taxes and other policies in Obamacare, the President's signature health care law is significantly impacting what matters most to people, and that is their jobs and their ability to provide for their families. It's no secret that a good job is a critical part of the American dream. But this President's policies are putting that dream farther and farther out of reach for many Americans. In fact, in selling the law, former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi declared at the time, and I quote, "This bill is not only about the health security of America, it's about jobs. In its life, it will create 4 million jobs, 400,000 jobs almost immediately," end quote. Well, the former speaker's claims run completely contrary and counter to what we are seeing. People are working fewer hours, and as the numbers I presented before demonstrate, fewer people are actually even participating in the labor force. Americans are discouraged by the lack of economic growth and by Obamacare's impact on employers and their ability to offer quality jobs. It's taking its toll on our economy. Just last week, Investors Business Daily reported that due to Obamacare, at least 258 employers cut work hours or jobs so far. Meanwhile, according to the United States Chamber of Commerce, 71% of small businesses say the law makes it harder to hire workers. And according to the July Fed Beige Book, the health care law has been cited as a job market concern. And they go on to quote from that report, several retailers reported that the Affordable Care Act would lead to more part-time and temporary versus full-time hiring, end quote. The President's health care law is smothering employers in bureaucratic red tape, uncertainty, and taxes. Already more than 20,000 pages of regulations have come from the 2,700-page law. The time and cost of complying with these regulations places a serious burden on the ability to spend time and energy creating new jobs. Time and money that would be spent opening a new store, increasing hours, upgrading equipment that would create more jobs is instead being spent on lawyers and consultants that have to help small businesses interpret all of the regulations, all the requirements, and all the mandates created by this administration's health care law. Poll after poll, Mr. President, has shown that Obamacare is extremely unpopular among a majority of Americans. According to a recent CNN ORC international poll, nearly 60% of Americans said they oppose the Democrat signature law. I would hope that the President would begin to be honest with the American people about what this law truly means for jobs and for our economy. And I would hope that he would begin to listen to Americans. If he does, he'll find out what most of us have discovered a long, long time ago, and that is the American people don't want this. American employers and small businesses believe it will lead to fewer jobs and lower take-home pay for the people that they employ. So, Mr. President, I would hope that in the days ahead, as we focus on the economy, and if the President is sincere about his pivot back to the economy, that he will take into consideration what really ails the economy. And that is excessive taxes, regulations, red tape, bureaucracy, mandates and requirements, many of which are associated with his signature achievement, and that is the Obamacare health care legislation. What the country does not need right now is another tax increase. What the country needs right now, Mr. President, are policies that will expand and grow the economy, that will reform our tax code in a way that lowers rates and makes us more competitive in the global marketplace, that unleashes American energy in a way that gives us a competitive advantage over our foreign competitors. And we can do that by all the President has to do is sign off, for example, on the Keystone Pipeline, which would create thousands of jobs immediately and many more once it's fully built and working. Mr. President, it would also mean that we do away with the onerous, burdensome requirements of the Obamacare legislation and replace it with policies that make sense, that actually focus on what will give Americans more access to affordable health care in this country. That we reduce spending here in Washington, D.C., and quit looking at every solution or every problem as an opportunity to raise taxes. That seems to be the Democrat solution for everything. Their budget proposed a $1 trillion tax increase. The leader of the Democrats here in the Senate has said that tax reform has to include $1 trillion in new taxes. It's not new taxes. It's not, I shouldn't say revenues, that is the problem here in Washington, Mr. President. It is spending. If you look at revenues, they're up $284 billion in the first 11 months of this year. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We don't need another tax increase. We need policies that will lower the rates, that will get rid of the red tape and the regulations that are strangling our economy and allow our small businesses to create jobs, to make lives better for middle-class Americans and to improve the take-home pay for every family in this country. The job-killing mandates in Obamacare are harmful to our economy. They are harmful to jobs. It is time, Mr. President, that we delay or repeal it and replace it with common sense alternatives. And we believe that discussion needs to occur, and I hope the President will allow it to occur. It's time to focus on comprehensive revenue-neutral tax reform of our broken tax system, repeal the mandates in Obamacare, and get rid of a lot of the government red tape and regulations that are making it more difficult and more expensive for employers in this country, for small businesses to create jobs. Mr. President, those are the types of things that will get the economy unleashed, that will expand and grow the economy and create more jobs for ordinary working class Americans who are without work, and get the take-home pay for families in this country up, and allow the quality of life and the standard of living to improve for every American family. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor.